Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Dr. Edward Abramson, author of Weight, Diet, and Body Image. Dr. Edward, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to get started?
Sure, let's go.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, if you're a first-time author, you probably have a day job as well as trying to fit writing into your schedule. One thing that I like to do, and I encourage other folks to do, is to keep a chart so that, you have a goal of however many words that you want to write each day. And so at the end of the day, you enter on your calendar or a separate chart the number of words that you have written. And that kind of keeps you on track and sets your goal. If you still have a regular job, there's always something that can interfere with your writing. And so having a firm goal and an objective way of measuring it, I think will help keep you on track.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Oh boy. If you're trying to get published by a commercial house, it's getting an agent or if you're submitting over the transom, as it's called, getting a publisher to actually give you a contract. It's gotten a lot more competitive in the last, 5 or 10 years. I was talking with an agent a while back, and she told me about one of her clients, someone who I recognized, and she said she couldn't get him a contract anymore. She had, represented him for several books, but was not having any luck with his most recent endeavor. It's just very hard to get a contract from a publisher.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
I've done a lot of radio interviews and a few television interviews. The high point was once I was on 2020, but I've probably done over 100 radio interviews over the years. And I think that's been successful in driving people to my book. Also, I've done other things ranging from word of mouth to book signings, but I think the radio interviews were probably the most successful.
Well, you mentioned getting on 2020, so walk us through that process. How were you able to accomplish that?
Well, it was a long time ago. I'm fortunate enough to belong to the American Psychological Association, and I'm on their media referral list. And so every now and then, when they get an inquiry about a weight topic or eating disorders, they'll give the writer or the reporter or the producer my name and number. And when it came to 2020, they called me and we had a lengthy kind of preliminary over-the-phone screening where they asked me a bunch of questions and then scheduled the appearance.
Nice. So basically, they did a pre-interview with you. It worked out well, and then you had the opportunity to be on the show.
Yeah, that's the way it went.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned about being part of the American Psychological Association too. So that seemed to be a great opportunity because you were able to basically be put on their media list, so to speak. And then when that came out, that opened up that door, so to speak.
Yeah, I would recommend, someone who's writing a book, if they belong to a professional association, to check with them to see if the association has a media or public affairs department. And if they do, see if you can get on their list, because the association will probably get inquiries from time to time, and they can then direct those inquiries to you.
Excellent. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, geez, I had to think about that for a while. Overall, I would say my favorite book is something that I read in the early 1970s, and it was a book called How I Turned $1,000 into $1 million in Real Estate in My Spare Time. Has nothing to do with being a psychologist or with writing books, but I did take some of the author's advice, and as a result, I was able to retire early. So I'm grateful for that book.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, I have two favorite quotes, if I can share them both with you.
Sure.
One, which I think relates to my interest in weight and eating disorders, is from Oscar Wilde. And he said, "I can resist everything except temptation." And I think when it comes to food, especially highly desirable ice cream or desserts or whatever, resisting temptation is quite the trick. The second quote that I really like is from Golda Meir, who was prime minister in Israel. And she said, "Don't be so humble, you're not that great." And for me, that's important, because realistically, anything to do with marketing a book requires that you put yourself out there. And if you tend to be humble or not liking to brag about yourself, you're probably missing some opportunities to enhance the sales of your books.
Well, Dr. Edward, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Twitter at Dr. Abramson, or LinkedIn, likewise, Dr. Abramson. Either way works.
Well, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.